facility. So this is a quarterly hearing of the Economic and International Affairs Scrutiny panel. Today we'll be discussing matters, first of all, relating to the draft budget proposals that affect your department, but also more general questions about your wider portfolio. I'm Deputy Montfort-Tadier, I'm the chair of this panel.
Deputy Karen Wilson, Vice Chair.
Deputy Max Andrews.
I'm Ian Gorst, Minister for External Relations and Financial Services.
Elaine Miller, Assistant Minister for External Relations and Financial Services.
Kate Nutt, Chief Officer, External Relations.
Julie Keir, Financial and Professional Services Senior Policy Officer.
Cora O'Brien, Deputy Controller, Revenue, Jersey.
Tom Lefevre, Director of External Relations.
And we've got Ian as well.
Ian is also Senior Policy Advisor.
Thank you. Are you comfortable there, and you'll be brought in as an...
We've got Dan Marcos, Head of Sanctions Division, joining us online as well,
Thank you.
if required.
Welcome. And Dan, can you hear us okay? Are you...
Thank you. I can hear everyone.
Thank you. Good. Well, welcome to all of you. Thanks for attending upon us today. Minister, I'm going to start off with some general questions about the budget. I'm also mindful of the fact that you have appeared, both of you, I think both were certainly before the more general scrutiny panel that's been convened last week by effectively Scrutiny Liaison. That notwithstanding, so could I ask you from an external relation and financial services perspective, what discussion and influence you've had in the formation of the proposed budget for this year?
Well, I suppose just the normal conversations about those departments like mine who have been subject to the ongoing recruitment freeze and the reduction in the use of consultants and the desire to allocate savings across departments. So I think it's fair to say that our more centralised departments have had to take some cuts and some savings and efficiencies in order to balance the whole budget. But this year is really no different from last year, and we managed, next year is no different from this year, and we broadly managed this year to do well. Oddly enough, some of those recruitment savings and those consultancy savings have meant that we've been able to pivot, certainly in the financial services section, towards competitiveness. And that's been a very positive thing. So even though we've had our budget limited, and JFL have had a reduction in their grant, which will continue into 2026, we've been able to largely, I think, carry out the functions that are expected of us, either through the common external relations policy or the competitiveness work that we've been doing in financial services. Of course, you know that some of the base case monies coming from Pillar 2 is also allocated to competitiveness. That's not as much as was previously allocated, but there is still there money for next year. And that will only be used and available when business cases ultimately come forward.
Thank you. We will come back to Pillar 2 in particular later on. Can I just ask about two things you mentioned? So first of all, how has the recruitment freeze and also the reduction in use of consultants affected your department?
Well, as you know from this year, in external relations, we have had to make some savings, about 79,000. What we've managed to do is reduce some of our grant payments because of a restructuring in the Brussels office. As you know, I think we've touched on that before, and then the balance of that has really been delivered through vacancy management and actual role reductions when people weren't in post. And I think it's fair to say that we have managed the workload well in despite those savings that we will have delivered in 2025.
And can I ask more specifically about the grant to Jersey Finance Limited? Could you remind us what the current grant has been and what the reduction or freeze is for them in the next few years?
So the grant to Jersey Finance in 2025 was 5,887,000. There was quite a substantial reduction this year compared to 24. As you know, they have managed within that envelope. One of the things that I was keen, however, to do was to ensure that if we had any underspends, which we had at the end of 2024, to make sure that they actually broadly had the same budget in 2025, even though they made the savings. So we topped it up with an underspend. What that did was mean that they could continue on really with their work in the US. So even though they had that headline cut, we managed our budget to allow them to keep the underlying work active.
And what's the projection for the coming years?
So I think it's broadly the same. Have I got the numbers for? The grant goes up. I think that's just inflationary numbers. It reaches 6,387 for 2026. But as I say, that's in effect their base. I've got no doubt that during the course of the year, when we look to bring forward business plans for the competitiveness funding, that there might be other programmes to grow our economy and promote Jersey, which would require funding as well.
So are you satisfied that they have sufficient resources, and also are they satisfied, as far as you know, that the budget resources are at least adequate?
Well, I think that they are very proactive. They understand the constraints on government budgeting. They understand the pressures that other social departments are putting on the overall budget, and they work in a collegiate manner to seek to deliver the core services in a way which is value for money. The reality, of course, is that we could always spend more money promoting ourselves when we look at some slightly larger but comparator jurisdictions, which are jurisdictions that we would like to see ourselves getting a greater share of perhaps the business that is going there. They are spending massively more money than we are for size of finance industry. And so we could always spend more, and that's one of the reasons that we've allocated the competitiveness money to make sure that we are promoting ourselves in an appropriate way. But that some of that will arise out of what the competitiveness report tells us and where we should allocate those resources.
Okay. And you said that competitive money, new money, is reliant on Pillar 2 receipts, or is that?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. I'll let Max, Deputy Andrews, follow up on that later and about the conditionality of that. Could I ask more generally, how does the prioritisation and consideration vary in budget considerations between your department as external relations versus financial services remits? And have there been different implications for?
So they're two different budgets, and they are allocated separately. It of course is a good question about whether those two budgets are targeted for success for Jersey as a international finance centre, or whether there is work arising out of thinking about how Jersey is structured for success in the future that might mean they're allocated in a different way. Only time will tell. Largely speaking, in financial services, we had already done some restructuring in expectation of the need to deliver savings. Then we had the saving to JFL budget. But of course, at the same time, we had the moving across from the police to the financial services bit, or the Department of the Economy of the Financial Intelligence Unit. So it made it look like our budget was increasing, but actually it was just a move across. In external relations, it's slightly different because it's a much smaller budget, and therefore our allocation of savings was smaller, which on the one hand can be more difficult to deliver, but I think that we've delivered it in a sensible and pragmatic way that meant, very largely speaking, the service that we've provided has remained.
I do have one question. Sorry, I won't be dominating all of the questioning, but going back to something you said earlier, is there a sense in which, talking about top-ups being given to financial services at the end of the year from underspends or from competitiveness, is there a risk that actually we're treating financial services or JFL differently to other ALOs who may not have such guaranteed, if it is a guaranteed source of income from such underspends?
Well, I think each minister is allocated their budget, and they decide how they're going to allocate their budget. For me, promotional work, which we outsource to Jersey Finance Limited for Jersey and its wider economy, is critically important. And so I will ask my officers to manage the budget in such a way, or I did, in such a way that we had the underspend, so we could contribute to the corporate savings target through a reduction in budget, but I could cushion them against that from an underspend in the previous year. So I very much prioritise making sure that Jersey's appropriately promoted and that we are competitive. Other ministers prioritise their budgets in the way that they see fit as well.
And so there wouldn't be a general overall discussion or philosophy about any new money that becomes available or underspends being targeted to things that would effectively result in economic growth, which I think is your ethos here.
That is my ethos, yeah. I think if you could, I can't answer on behalf of the Minister for Sustainable Economic.
But would you like to see that?
But I think he does the same in his budget as well.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Minister, we'll be moving on to Pillar 2 receipts. I just wanted to really start by asking you, what do you intend for Pillar 2 receipts to deliver, and that forms part of your strategy?
Well, as you know, that we've been very cautious in our calculation of Pillar 2, potential Pillar 2 receipts. Mm-hmm. And so what we've done is basically take banking institutions and looked at their current income and forecast income through the filter of the new regime, which has given us that what we've called a base case of just over £50 million. In the last budget, we had the same forecast roughly. In this budget, it remains the same and it continues. That base case we expect to continue, but we know that there's a lot of work still ongoing at OECD, and Cora is directly involved in that, and that the US want their regime to be considered as a equal regime by the side. That will potentially affect in 2026 any potential upside. We don't know the detail of that yet. We expect there will be upside in 2025, but again, we don't know the quantum of that. So we very carefully said we're just going to work to the base case scenario. So the base case scenario was, in the previous budget, allocated to financing the borrowing on the hospital and to competitiveness, and the remainder into the stabilisation fund. As you know, the public finances have weakened since that budget was proposed and agreed by the Assembly, and so it remains that now we have money allocated from that base case to financing the borrowing on the hospital, and a smaller, in effect largely halved allocation to competitiveness work. But as I said earlier, answer to the chair, we are still needing to provide business cases for the allocation of that during the course of 2026.
Okay, so what elements of the competitiveness are likely to be impacted from what you originally had anticipated the full amount to be used for?
Well, we were just looking at our best roughly divvying up of what this money would be based on uncertain forecasts. We've had to be pragmatic, as I described earlier, with my overall budget.
Yeah.
Of course, we would all be happier from an economic competitiveness and growth perspective if we had that larger number allocated. But every department's had to be almost suck it up in order to fund the social expenditure which is required. We didn't have detailed business cases for the 15. No. And we are now working on more detailed cases for the smaller number, and that will come out of the wider competitiveness work, which, as you know, is not due to complete until March, I think it is, of next year.
I just want to ask about how is the competitiveness financing going to be what is it going to be intended for? What elements are we going to be improving? And do you think all of those elements are actually going to improve financial services whilst maintaining our competitiveness against other jurisdictions as well?
So if we think what are some of the things that we are going to need to do, I think we've just touched on looking at where are we already placing our bets when it comes to promotion? And do we need to double down on any of those, or are there any new markets that we need to think about? So that's one quite big bet. Even if you take it away from, are we working with institutions in that sector to think about promotion in a way that we perhaps haven't done in the past, so we'll do that. Then you've got the tax work, so even the Pillar 2 and the wider tax work, we know that there's an opportunity in that implementation to think about digitisation and a portal that can make everybody's tax experience better and more digitally enabled. So I'd expect that we'll be looking at some of that. You've also got the digitisation work that needs to be undertaken with the register and the work that the JFSC does, and this idea that how do we overcome the friction and the bureaucracy that is all of the AML CFT process. So it wouldn't be surprising again if there was some allocation to that sort of work as well. I have to ask ourselves, is the policy work fully funded, or is there more policy things that we should be doing? How are we welcoming new business to Jersey? What does that mean? Does that require more funding? How are we gathering intelligence and information from what others are doing? So we're not at that point of saying this is where our money will be allocated, but we can think about the broad themes.
Yeah, I think you've got a chair.
Thank you. No, that's fine for now. Thank you, Deputy Andrews. I'll pass on to Deputy Wilson at this point.
Just building on what you've just said, Minister, could you just tell us in what other ways you're encouraging continued investment in Jersey apart from financial services? And what assurances can you provide to businesses to support confidence in the island's economic environment?
So, of course, it depends which hat you're asking me to wear. As the Minister responsible for financial services with the support of the Treasury Minister, we are absolutely committed to sustaining and growing Jersey as a business and financial services centre, because that's the core of our economy. And without it growing and winning new business, the rest of the economy suffers as well. Sorry, go on. did you want
I was
to say
just
something?
going to say better business support package of
Yeah,
£20
well,
million.
Yeah, and I was going to come on to
Sorry.
if I'm wearing my external relations hat. That really is about us supporting other ministers in the work that they are seeking to develop, and that's a slightly.
Could you give us an
a
example of
slightly
how you're doing
different-
that?
A slightly well, we get approached by ministers to support with whatever work that it is that they are doing. Of course, as Treasury Minister says, in the wider budget, there's money allocated for other sectors of the economy as well. You might want to talk.
Yeah, I mean, the business support, better business support package has had £10 million this year and £10 million next year. I think to the extent any of that is left from this year, it'll be rolled over into next year. And that is providing schemes that businesses, any local business can apply for grant funding on a match basis if they're doing things to develop technology, productivity related enhancements. A specific sum has gone to Visit Jersey. Visit Jersey's had some additional funding from that. There's packages available or funding available for people to upskill their employees, for apprentices. The apprenticeship scheme has not been as well taken up as we might have hoped, but we think that's possibly because with the trainee wage having been removed, people have not been taking on apprentices. So now that the trainee wage has been reinstated, we would be hopeful that we will see more applications for the apprentice funding. So that covers a broad range of the economy, including construction, hospitality, retail. So as all the businesses that we thought were most likely to be impacted by the increase in the minimum wage to the living wage.
I think the question is more about what from an external relations.
I was going to answer.
Yes,
I just thought you might be interested in that because it's in the budget and it's a considerable amount of money. So there are a number of ways that we do the other thing in external relations, and if I think about the MOU with Antigua and about exchange of people. The similar is happening in Kenya. I was with the Ghanaian High Commissioner last week, and they would like a similar type of MOU for movement of people, which will support industries right across Jersey's economy. We've got MOUs around education and language, again, trying to do similar things. We're working with the UK government and the Environment Department here around the Common Understanding and the SPS agreement. That's about promotion of business and easing friction from business. So that's them at a high level, but Tom, I don't know if you wanted to, because Tom's leads on those
could I just sort of
inter-country pieces of work.
Yeah. So could I just ask us to focus on, because I think what you've described is the central tenet of Jersey's economy. You've also just described a number of enabling external relations exercises. I think what we're interested to know is, in terms of the growth to the economy and in terms of actually diversifying the economy, what other products and services from an external relations perspective are you working on to support people to invest in Jersey, to deliver those new products and services?
So do you want, should we just cover off the bits with Tom, because what that follow-up question is really a different thing, which is not encouraging people to invest in Jersey. There's two elements to that.
And I'm more interested in the trading element of it.
Yeah, but so there's the element of investment into capital.
Yeah.
And we've seen some partnership agreements to do that, but then there's also investment as in using Jersey for direct investment anywhere around the globe, so garnering up, and that gives value to Jersey's economy because it creates jobs and it provides that tax take as well. So Tom, I don't know if you want to just
on the agreement side, the examples that the minister mentioned, they're relevant in terms of the supply of people. So one of the challenges that we, as external relations, have been trying to address is that post-Brexit, there have been substantial movements of people, and it's a different labour market. It's not a Jersey problem, it's a global problem. But some of the things that you can do are to put in place the right frameworks that allow for people from other jurisdictions to come and work, for example, across our economy, whether it's hospitality, tourism, other forms of services, agriculture. But in order for Jersey to be an attractive place for them to come, then we have MOUs in place that provide standards in treatment that ensure that they get the right information about suitable jobs in Jersey. So we partnered with JSIS to deliver some of that. It's also things like double taxation agreements. We, I suppose, historically perhaps thought about double taxation agreements from a business perspective, but actually they also govern how individuals are taxed. And if you're moving between jurisdictions in a year, then having certainty over how you'll be taxed in one place or the other, which is what a double taxation agreement can do, is an important part of the package. So we do try, I think, through those sorts of initiatives to contribute to a much broader set of economic interests, recognising, of course, that financial services is the engine, but there's all the activity around that, hospitality, restaurants, all that activity requires staffing and people, and external relations is playing quite an active role in trying to set up the right frameworks to enable more people to choose Jersey as somewhere to live and to work.
Thank you for that. So what you're describing are processes that will enable a workforce to support the economy in terms of what we currently provide at this moment in time. Is that correct?
But it's not just process, it's also legal rights and obligations.
Right,
So
yes,
a framework
that goes with
really.
it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think what we're trying to understand is whether there is any opportunity through the work of external relations to pick up the Minister's point around develop capital investment in the island, such that it brings new industries or new kinds of products and services to the island.
I mean, the first point I'd make is, and then I'll come back to you, Thomas. So things like I was in, was it last month or the month before in Bahrain, signing the double taxation agreement. That's important because it allows the certainty and understanding of how those investments are going to be treated. Now, we know that, take Bahrain, for example, an investor from Bahrain had I think they've just changed it, had an investment in a telecoms company here. So that was directly providing, JT may have another view on this, but it was directly providing competition and lowering the prices in the telecoms market for islanders, and that was through investment from the Middle East, and so they might seem quite dull and boring, but they do actually start to facilitate because they give that legal certainty. I'm not sure that it is external relations' job to go and look for other strings to our economic bows. But if we do see things that are working elsewhere and we are engaged with countries elsewhere, then of course we feed them back and we facilitate connections and meetings and considerations of these particular things. The other thing I'd say is that I have always been one of those people that, okay, I'm quite happy for people to look about diversification, but I'm focused on making sure that the financial services industry is diversified, and that's why we do all the work that we do about product refreshment, changing our legislation, making it up to date, thinking about if there are other products and streams that we can bring into financial services that we haven't historically done. And that's a lot of work that Julie's team does as well.
Okay,
it's also fair to say...
Sorry, Minister, can I just stop you a minute? Because I think the Chair wanted to come in at that point.
I think I'm trying to tie in a couple of different themes. So I'm going to park I want to ask you about other external relations matters relating to Guernsey and France. But if I can just come back to a point which I think is also related is, so the traditional model of the three-legged stool in Jersey's economy, so if we take it to be agriculture, tourism, hospitality, and then finance. And we also know that there's been a demand from financial services that a lot of if there's any income, for example, that's been generated from Pillar 2, that actually yes, that can be invested in competitiveness, but employers want to see it invested in the local infrastructure too, so that Jersey becomes an attractive place to work. I think we've established that already. Is there a tension, and so I want to also refer to the Fiscal Policy Panel's paper just a few days ago about the implications, for example, of things around the living wage, the move to living wage, the cost of doing business in Jersey, the inflationary pressures that there are currently in Jersey, including around goods and services, with actually trying to recruit and maintain staff within that sector. Are there some inherent contradictions that you're aware of that are affecting, in particular, the financial services industry that you need to take action on?
So,
is that too broad a question, or do you?
Yeah, well, I'm not quite sure what you. But let me.
Because
you've weaved all over the place there. So let's just be clear. And those financial services might be an international export business, but those people living in Jersey and working in Jersey experience Jersey's everyday existence. So staff working in financial services as well feel the high cost of housing, feel the high cost of living, feel the high cost of childcare. I have to be careful as the Minister for Financial Services that I don't tread on other ministerial toes in the policies that they are bringing forward, other than to say these are issues which need consideration because they affect everybody in Jersey. They don't just affect one particular part of the Jersey community. They affect everybody.
I suppose what I'm asking is that the Fiscal Policy Panel basically talked quite a lot about inflationary pressures. So they talk about annual food rates of inflation, comparing it to the UK. At the same time, they attribute the increase in the living wage as one of the factors putting pressure on businesses. But the reason for the living wage is to make sure people can stay and afford to live in Jersey. So how does one resolve that problem? And what's the implication for the sectors under your remit?
So I think you're trying to drag me into an argument which really is not within my remit. And as much as I'd like to be dragged into that argument, I'm not sure it's sensible for me to do for. I think it is a good question. How do you encourage higher paid jobs in those sectors which have traditionally been lower paid jobs, because you know that those individuals are finding the cost of living difficult? And you can have a political argument about that. But there's no doubt that the majority of our inflation in Jersey is imported, but there is this level of inflation which isn't imported, which we've not always been very good at acknowledging or accepting. And some of that is about pay rises, and it's not just the living wage, it's also what government pays its employees. That directly feeds into inflation. But it's quite difficult to get the balance right.
Getting back to what Deputy Wilson's point is there a sense, though, in which the growth can also be imported? So if we look at the growth is reduced in financial services, and we're told that's largely down to interest rates, whereas the growth in other sectors, which could have a tangible benefit to the economy, maybe is more within our control. Are those?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because as the FPP said, the growth within the other sectors is largely connected with an increase in the living wage. The increase in the living wage has grown the overall size of that bit of the economy, but it's also led to inflationary pressures. And so getting that balance right is difficult. I'm one who's always been sceptical about understanding the underlying figures in the growth in the economy, because when there's high interest rates in a banking-based economy, then the overall size of the economy grows, so you've got a growing economy. Interest rates are reduced. They might be reduced to deal with inflationary pressures. We have the benefit of a smaller inflation import number, but it looks as though our economy has shrunk, but our economy has only shrunk statistically, What's important is the number of people still employed, the number of firms still here, the number of new funds being written, the number of various, all of the things that go to make up the financial services industry, and that the health of that is actually a better indicator.
And we have seen job growth, haven't we?
Than the overall GVA figure because of the uniqueness of our economy.
Okay.
Thank you. I think we got to the points I wanted to make. Thank you.
Okay. I'm just going to move on to the budget, if I may, around the 24.9 million allocated to a number of areas of expenditure that are determined by a pre-agreed formula. And this includes technical adjustments to increase budgets for financial services, for the regulation of non-profit organisations.
Do you have the... so I think, I haven't got that bit of the budget in front of me because I was only... I think you're referring to the money that comes out of the dormant bank accounts to fund the office of the Charity Commissioner.
Yes.
Yeah. So, sorry, so your question was?
So what we want to know is whether or not the expenditure are determined by a pre-agreed formula.
I'm not sure it's a pre-agreed formula. I think it's more the reasonableness of the size of the office in relation to the size of the sector. It is, I haven't got the official that deals with it here, but I know that she is, and I say this as a compliment, she is a stickler, and she makes sure that when the budget forecast comes in, that it is reasonable. I can certainly, if you've got follow-up questions, provide more detail on the process that she goes through, but I certainly have no concerns about the work that she does in this regard. Okay,
and in terms of us helping us move on, could you also tell us what extra work the budget allows within this envelope of expenditure, and are there any elements that in the budget that allow for growth in this area at all?
I think the law is quite clear. It can only be there's two elements that money can be spent out of the dormant bank account. One is the money given directly to charity through the Jersey Community Foundation, and the other is the running of the office of the Charity Commissioner. And as I say, the individual involved controls that. Both the amount that is provided to the Charity Commissioner. The Charity Commissioner is not a full-time role and has got very small back office provisions. I think there's two. I'm not even sure that they're full-time employees. And then the allocation to charities is done very much in line with, in conjunction though with, it's a process whereby Jersey Community Foundation talks to us about the need of the charitable sector at any given point. You'll know we've just moved to a 3-year funding envelope as well for them. Talks to us about needs in the charitable sector, talks to us about the bids that they're getting from charities for the various work that they're doing and the applications that they've got. We then overlay that with the performance of the fund, recognising that actually the fund is a contingent liability for the government and may be called on at any time to be repaid. And we work with Treasury around the returns and allocating the returns. Historically, we've always only tried to allocate the returns so that the fund was growing in real terms. As we've moved to the 3-year budget, we are slightly eating into that real terms growth. But likewise, we are seeing other dormant bank account monies put into that fund. So it currently stands just somewhere over 60 million, I think it is.
Yeah.
So it still remains a healthy fund, but we remind ourselves it is a contingent liability of the state.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Minister, I'm just going to turn to questions around the Technology Accelerator Fund in more detail. So,
So I'm happy to hear your question, but it doesn't fall within directly within my remit unless you're going to ask me about something that you might think would be.
yes, it's a good point.
To do with the AI stuff. So could I just ask a question?
Oh, you want to talk about AI? No, that's fine. We've got Julie with us. So.
I'll let you lead on that.
So I think our question is in terms of what's available in the budget, and given that AI is going to be a central tenet of sort of progression, if you like, in the financial services industry in particular, could you give us an indication of what your plans are and what you're investing and how much you're allocating to support this?
So there's two answers, I suppose, to this. One is, again, it wouldn't be surprising if there was some potential use around the competitiveness money to kickstart and facilitate work in this area. We don't. I'm just saying that wouldn't surprise me. But secondly, which is really where we're more engaged, is the work that Julie is ongoing from a policy perspective and an acceptance perspective and a regulatory framework perspective. So if you don't mind, I'll just ask Julie to say a bit more if she...
Yeah, of course. So we're working with the regulator to issue guidance, or the regulator will be issued guidance on the use of AI for financial services shortly. I think that's anticipated in the next couple of months. But in terms of sort of internal policy or guidance issued by the government, that's not really somewhere as a department we're going at the moment. We're working with the regulator to do it that way. But so there's no kind of direct funding needed in that respect.
Right, can I just add something? Yeah, I mean, the conversations I had in Washington, industry are doing this on their own.
Yeah.
They are already, one of them I think said, we have rolled out AI to 65,000 staff worldwide. You know, they are already using this themselves, and they don't need us to tell them to do it or to subsidise them to do it, because they see the benefits. But I think when we get to policy and regulatory aspects, that's where our role might come in. But I think financial services is very open and probably actively investing AI, investigating and investing in it, because they see the benefit it will bring them if used properly.
So I think that's right. If you go down the Esplanade to some of the big banking institutions, some of those big banking institutions are already using AI from an AML, CFT, transaction monitoring perspective, which is a really positive thing. The challenge, I suppose, for Jersey as a jurisdiction is those large institutions are. Some of the smaller institutions, which are maybe have different ownership structures, let's put it like that. They might need some framework changes and support from a framework legislative base to enable them to win the funding, as it were, to implement AI. The other thing that we are thinking about is, okay, it's not that there's two schools of thought to AI. We know that some more how can I describe it? It's not mundane jobs, more process-led jobs. AI is going to affect them, and so as a jurisdiction we have a choice to lean into that and think about how we can win that business and lead that business rather than having it done to us by others. And that's some early stage thinking.
Minister, can I jump in? It's a related question to AI, I suppose. It's we know that there's going to be good applications, neutral and bad applications of AI, which are harmful. I've had some correspondence from someone in the industry who says that when it comes to cyber security, Jersey has almost no rules, or there's no guidance being issued by JFSC to financial services industry, and that the lack of guidance is so poor that most trusts or businesses are effectively turning to rules set by the Guernsey regulator to try and establish best practice in the industry. Is that an area which you've been made aware of, or is it something that you'd be happy to look into?
Well, I think I'm not sure it's, obviously I've not had sight of the full message. I think it would be a slightly unfair characterisation of what Jersey per se is doing, because the cyber security, they call themselves an institute these days, or centre. They have issued guidance and they're doing very good work, which of course is something in Guernsey that's not happening, but it may be what we find is happening is in Guernsey, the regulator is doing some of that work.
Yeah.
And so the question is, are they properly married up and coordinated? So that's certainly something that we can take away and ensure that they are, if there's a feeling that some sectors of industry would like the regulator to do that as well as
maybe
the
a joined
cyber
up thing,
security centre.
I accept that's only one voice. And
No, but it's important to listen to all voices.
And it's related, but sorry if we haven't put this explicitly on the question area, but I suppose it is, we are mindful of also the JFSC data breach earlier in the year, and we know that the Information Commissioner has issued formal reprimands, but they can't find a government body. So can we be given reassurance that there's enough being done here and that there's enough of a disincentive generally to make sure that no more data breaches would occur?
Well, I am advised and assured that they have made the necessary changes and enhancements to ensure that those breaches don't occur again. But what I think is also important that we recognise that some of the UK's blue chip institutions probably could have sat in front of you and made the same commitment, and they've been ultimately found wanting. I know that from the regulator's perspective, they are extremely mindful of how sensitive the data is that they hold. A bit like Revenue Jersey, extremely sensitive data, and therefore they've got to have the best available systems to them. We also know, of course, once something has gone wrong, it's how we then deal with it and how we move forward, which is the most important thing, as much as we apologise for the error in the first place. But I am advised that the system is such that all of the areas that were open have been closed and the system has been changed to ensure that it doesn't happen again. I don't know if you want to add anything else. No.
Thank you.
Can I just pick up on the comment that, the head of Jersey Finance, Joy Monaghan, said that he didn't expect that the headcount would significantly change, but you've just suggested that it potentially will.
Well, I think he'd have said he didn't expect the headcount to significantly change within the framework of the budget.
Of the budget.
So that's the budget.
Okay.
But we've still got that allocation for competitiveness to the side, which has not actually been allocated to any particular head of expenditure.
His actual statement was that he did not expect AI adoption to drastically reduce headcount in Jersey.
Oh, sorry, you're talking about, we're back to, I thought we were about the budget then.
Yeah. He also referred to a report that was done by Grant Thornton that was looking at the impact of AI on the financial services. Is this the work that is going on at the moment in terms of responding to that report, or are you considering any aspects of that report in terms of preparing your plans for AI going forward?
Well, I haven't read that exact report. I think that JFL would have been talking about how we respond to it and the jobs that will be maintained and available and how we pitch towards that. But Tom's is directly involved in the competitiveness work, and of which this is part, so he might have some comments to make.
So it's certainly a theme that has come up within the competitive review, and we'd expect that because businesses are preparing for this technological shift. It would, just like everybody else is. I think one of the things that underpins that job's comment, although obviously I can't speak and wouldn't seek to speak for Joe, is that it links back to some of what the Minister was saying. For certain kinds of more process administrative roles, it's already been the case with Jersey that there's a significant amount of outsourcing that happens to other centres. So that's just part of globalisation, that if you can book some of that elsewhere, and if a service provider can do it to the same standard but can do it at a competitive rate, then naturally that will happen. I think where we see some of the early adoption of AI continuing will be in those kinds of activities. So I suppose the argument could be made, those roles and activities have already been outsourced to another centre. They're not here in Jersey, and therefore if there's tech adoption that means that that's done by AI instead of people, then that might not necessarily be people who are already working in Jersey. But there is a however. I don't think anybody should be too confident about making predictions about how AI is going to have. It's going to have a transformative effect, and we know that financial services, from the work on competitiveness, is a sector that will be significantly affected. It's also the case that there'll be. One of the things when we're thinking about jobs, for example, in Jersey, is looking at the broader systemic effects. So, I think one of the things that will happen with AI is that the tech companies and the owners of that technology stand to, I think, some of them anyway, to make very significant sums of money. There's going to be lots of profitable new kinds of business activity. Jersey, in terms of our finance industry, has always been engaged in wealth management, asset protection. That's a core part of why people use Jersey as a stable location for onward investment of some of those flows. So that in turn creates activity for people to service some of those demands. So I think Joe was probably just trying to reflect that it's a nuanced picture. It's not the case that you lose some and you gain others, but history would show over recent years that there's always that sort of balancing effect.
I think the concern is more about the pace of change, and the Minister alluded to leaning in, but we're just trying to establish how on top of this are we in terms of actually trying to make things. I'm going to move on if that's okay, because we've got
just to say, that's what we're thinking about, but we remind ourselves our best success is when we're a fast follower, and this is an area where when I speak to investors in it, somebody was speaking to me at the end of last week, I think, everybody knows they've got to invest in it and do AI, but nobody can really tell you exactly where the bet that they're going to make will be successful. Mm-hmm. And so that fast follower is quite, I think, a good model for us to continue to use.
Can I just ask, because I don't think any of us necessarily profess to be experts in the world of AI, but there's a sense in which, of course, it's not new technology. A calculator is AI, and it's been around for a long time and does save a lot of time and resources. But is there a wider government strategy, and are there interministerial discussions about what the implications of not just AI, but of outsourcing to automation might have in terms of the unintended consequences, especially for the tax receipts, etc., and social security contributions, and to where the potential for growth versus losses is? Is that something being discussed sufficiently or at all? Simple yes or no.
I think it's something we just need to monitor and see what happens. I mean, if there are people, I think the advantage of AI could be that instead of doing dull process work, people are doing work that generates better returns and better salaries.
I'm just asking, I know what the advantages and disadvantages, but are the discussions taking place?
So I think the direct answer to your question is there are conversations taking place in pockets from various ministers who might be speaking to other ministers. I am not, as we sit here, aware of an overarching work stream that's taking place, but that might just be my ignorance.
Okay.
And do you think that would be desirable or necessary at some point? If not, it's really a ministerial question.
No, they were just reminding me that, as you will know, that the Digital Jersey have just created the AI Council, of which all sorts of bodies and I think government have been invited to join, and that is a good thing. That's, as I understand it, going to be looking from across the economy and across the island. I think your point is more about from a governmental perspective and a public finances perspective and a quality of life perspective. And I think it's a point well made. I think it's those conversations are happening in pockets, and maybe now is the time to raise it up to a strategic dialogue.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. In the panel's comments produced in November last year, scrutinising the budget for 25-28, the panel made the following recommendation. The Minister for External Relations and the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development should undertake a formal consultation on the current budgeting process for arm's length organisations that includes the timeframe for agreement and payment of grants to ALOs by no later than the 30th of December 2024. Could you provide the panel with an update on the progress made to undertake this recommendation, and in doing so, what consideration, if any, was given to the creation of the budget for this year with regards to this recommendation?
Sorry, Vice Chair, could you just remind me whether we accepted that recommendation?
I don't have access to it at this moment in time, but let's assume
Maybe it wasn't
Well,
fully
you
on.
didn't, because
No.
you would have been able to tell me about the work.
Yes. So I think that's probably right, or we might have partially accepted it, or we might just have avoided accepting or not accepting it, sadly. I think from our perspective, working with our Jersey Finance and the Arm's Length organisation, well, one of the things that we did in order to soften and ensure that they could deal with the reduction in this year's grant was to make sure that we tightened up all of those things, that payments were made in a timely manner, that the information provided, I think, was templated, and as far as I'm aware, I've not been advised otherwise, that that's gone a lot more smoothly in 2025, but unless Julie knows to the counter, no. Which I think is what you were driving at in your recommendation.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. In terms of, will we see any of that activity reflected in the budget for 26, 29?
Well, other than I think that's what we do. That's the process that we're now following. That more timely issuing of grant payments, then giving of the in-year certainty, and that will continue throughout this budget.
For all of them?
Well, I can only speak on behalf of the ones for which I am responsible.
Okay, can you just clarify for the public record which ones you are?
Jersey Finance Limited.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we had some questions down here on Pillar 2 again, but I think they may have been partly covered at the beginning.
Yeah.
I don't know if we've explicitly asked you, Minister, though, about what you think the projected level of Pillar 2 receipts are likely to be. I don't know if are you able to tell us that?
No, I don't think you have asked me, nor do I think I've replied to it. No.
Would you like to answer?
No, thank you. I think we're sticking to the sensible base case scenario. Interestingly, Guernsey, in their budget last week, suggested that they thought our approach was one which they might like to follow. We do, of course, know that there will be for 25 some upside. We can't quantify that yet, but what concerns me is that any potential upside for 1 year can't be banked on for future years because of the ongoing conversations at the OECD, and therefore we should only be allocating, as we are, the base case, so that if we're going to put that into budgets, at least we can be as robust in that forecast and as confident in that forecast as we possibly can. If we would try to calculate any other upside, we couldn't be confident in it, in its quantum, nor in its continuance.
Thank you. Is a reason for the uncertainty from year to year also to do with tax deferrals, and so we don't know what tax will be declared in any 1 year? Or
no, because it works on the under Pillar 2. It works on your accounts. So of course losses can be carried forward. We know that that's always been the case in Jersey. It's about the changes to the international regime itself.
Okay. Thank you. Well, no doubt there'll be further questions in the future, and not just from our panel. But I don't know if you've got any other points to...
No, I was just asking Cora if she wanted to add. Or,
Covers it.
No, we're not specifically here to have a hearing about it, but it's just important to touch base.
There's just
on
one
that.
question on any impacts on trade that Jersey undertakes with other countries. Is there any impact being felt at this moment in time around the establishment of all of these new tax frameworks?
That's a good question. We've engaged heavily with institutions that use Jersey and intermediaries and advisors to seek to mitigate any potential nervousness as the US and the OECD continue to work through what the regime will look like going forward. I think largely we've been positively received, and the legislation that we've got in place has been positively received, but we are very clear that should this new agreement be reached, then we'll have to consider if our legislation still provides those base core policy aims that we set off with, which one is complying with relevant international standards, making sure that there's as a level a playing field as possible, making sure that we're doing it to comply with international standards and not to raise revenue. Raising revenue has been a positive side effect, but that's not been our policy aim, and it won't be our policy aim. That tax neutrality will remain core to what we do in the future. And then this thing about bureaucracy, making sure that the Jersey approach to this is as bureaucracy-free as possible. And those are roughly the core principles that we started with, and we'll need to make sure and review what we've got if there is this change, to ensure that what we've got really holds true to those principles.
Thank you.
If I can move on to wider economic considerations, and this talks about cross-cutting collaboration between yourself and the Economic Development Department. So if we think about your role as External Relations Minister outside of Jersey Financial Services, what interaction would you have in stimulating the economy from external inward investment that's not necessarily related to financial services, and where does the line fall between the role of economic development? Minister? No.
Well, I think we've touched on some of those in answer to the questions of the Vice Chair about how we're supporting broader economic initiatives. I suppose one of the things that we do, which we know that the Sustainable Minister for Sustainable Economic Development, not the Sustainable Minister for Economic Development,
key point to make.
Yeah, is passionate about our relationship with France and seeking to want to open up trade routes there. And we facilitated for him a number of inward trips into France through the offices of our BIM, and he attended most recently the Scrutiny summit. He was involved in the Normandy summit here, and he's very active in trying to build that relationship and strengthen that relationship in France, and we provide all of the support for him to do that.
So can I ask then, we're mindful of the fact that you do a lot of your work is much further afield, in whether it's through bilateral treaties, etc. But when it comes to our two closest neighbours, so France and Guernsey, should we say, are you concerned that there's been a cooling of relationships between those two neighbours, at least in some part, when it comes to France, and certainly with Guernsey, that we're not in the position where you would want to see us as an external relations minister?
Well, it comes back to balance again, doesn't it? We've always got to put Jersey's interests first, and then we've got to seek to mitigate any potential relational or diplomatic fallout from putting Jersey's interests first, and that's what we do. Individual ministers make their decisions, and we then seek to advise that they do so in such a way that will limit any diplomatic fallout, or seek to bridge divides if they arise. From my perspective, I think our relationship with our French neighbours is positive.
Do you think the oyster exporters, Minister,
departmental? Well, I'm coming to this point. In a departmental perspective, it's been always fair to say that our relationship in Paris has been more challenging. It's been positive regionally, but more challenging to get traction in Paris. And of course, we know that post-Brexit, all of that friction, whilst can seem bureaucratic and form-bound, has real effect upon real people's lives.
Can I challenge the idea that we've got good relations with the regions now? I mean, we've seen the oyster exporters having their stocks refused on some occasions, what apparently due to fairly spurious and pedantic bureaucracy. We've also seen questions about Saint-Malo's port and what kind of access our ferries get there. So has there been a downturn in relations with even the regions in France?
Well, I don't think we can base the quality of our relationship on if one official has behaved in a certain way. And as you well know, there's the state-appointed officials, and there's the regional appointed officials, and then there's the political overlay. It's fair to say that you can there can be officials which are pedantic over the filling in of paperwork, and we can have that with an official. It doesn't need to be French. Officials. We can have Jersey officials who are pedantic about paperwork, and Islanders have to.
But it's not
live with that every day.
Yeah, this isn't a hypothetical. So I was at the Jersey Farming Conference, and a question was put to the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development about that issue about shellfish exports, and we've had one issue to do with paperwork, a wrong number being put on it, but then there's the whole issue of ice not containing the right type of water, and it's not meeting the right standards. So these are clearly things which are to do with whether or not France considers it in the public interest for them to enforce these. And what's your role as External Relations Minister in trying to smooth over that excessive bureaucracy?
So every time any incident is brought to our attention, we seek to reach out to the French either departmental council or the official directly that's been making the decision, and the relationships that our officials have from the Court Office with relevant officials is very positive. But as I say, it's not always possible to overcome if you've got an official that says, well, the rule says you've got to fill the form in this way. We in our culture tend to be more pragmatic, don't we? I think that's not necessarily the same in some European cultures, and we are very much up against that. But not only do we raise those issues with our French counterparts, we raise those issues with our counterparts in Brussels, and we raise those issues with our counterparts in the United Kingdom. Sometimes we feel as though we're making progress, and other times we feel as though we're on backward steps again. But we will continue to do that, as I know the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development will do, because we recognise the drastic effect that it's having on not only the oyster industry, but the wider fishing community per se. That's why we've been to Paris, we've been to Brussels, we've been regionally talking about the CVEP. It's why now we're absolutely focused on being included in the SPS agreement that's in the common understanding between the UK and the EU. I will be in Paris on next week. I'll be in Brussels next week, making these exact same cases about why it's important that the rules are stuck to, that were negotiated in good faith, and that pragmatism, because we believe it's absolutely in the interests of the French to be pragmatic about the bureaucracy. Because as we know, the oysters are bought as seeds, they're brought here, they are raised quickly because of our tidal flows and good husbandry, and then they can go back and be quality products in the European market. What's not to like? It's good for them, it's good for us.
And are you mindful to reiterate the point that, you know, Jersey is different to the UK, and also if it's a consideration for the French, that we also didn't start Brexit. It's nothing to do with us. Is that somewhere at the back of their minds, perhaps?
Well, it's a good question, because I do sometimes worry that it is, that they do worry that we are doing things as a forward movement for the UK, but we are absolutely clear that what we do is in our own interests, and it's for Jersey's interests, and it's not the UK's position that we're following.
Thank you. Okay. Deputy Andrews, I think we're on question 25, if you want to, for our purposes, about competitiveness. Are you happy to answer?
Yes, absolutely. And obviously we've touched on several elements to do with the competitiveness programme before, but Minister, you obviously mentioned about the full amount that was probably originally intended for investment in financial services for the sake of competitiveness, and obviously now we've got the cost of the hospital to also consider as well with the Pillar 2 tax receipts. So I just wanted to really ask you, Minister, how much of an impact will the investment have for financial services, and how much will be allocated towards financial services as well?
Well, I think we discussed the allocation earlier, and the approach that we were going to be taking to it earlier. Of course, I would have liked the full amount. I think every minister would say that they would like the full amount of their budget, wouldn't want to make any savings. I make the case that the competitiveness of our economy is vitally important to every islander's future. And that's why I strongly make the case that the allocation that was, even though it was much reduced, should be maintained in the budget, and it is.
And so how is this potentially going to affect us when we've got potentially other jurisdictions who are going to be investing a considerably higher amount of their Pillar 2 tax receipts into their financial services?
Well, we, of course, we don't know yet what other jurisdictions will be doing in regard to Pillar 2. If we look at some of our more immediate neighbours, they've just simply allocated it into their everyday budget. Others we expect might do different things with it. And as you know, we've not just allocated that amount there, but we're also thinking, continue to think about QRTCs, about incentives for investment. We were considering whether we could have something as an amendment to the finance law later this year, but I think from our conversations last week that was looking more unlikely. But so it's not just one thing that will maintain our competitiveness, it's any number of things as well as the actual resource being allocated.
So you just mentioned an acronym. I was just wondering if you could just inform me what the acronym is.
Yeah, it's a Pillar 2 tax incentive called the Qualifying Refundable Tax Credit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. No.
So the Minister introduced an innovation incentive, which we'll be getting the first results from in the corporate income tax returns filed at the end of this month.
Yeah.
So we will be doing an exercise to review that incentive and to sort of get feedback about, you know, whether it hit the mark, whether it needs any adjustment, and whether it can be converted into a Pillar 2 compliant tax incentive as well, which would
Okay.
help improve some behavioural change, support behavioural change.
No, thank you very much for that clarification. Minister, obviously the Pillar 2 tax receipts will be enabling to a certain extent for financial services, but how much is financial services already evolving and making the change naturally to make sure that they are competitive without any government interference?
Well, I think it's, as the Treasury Minister said earlier, different firms and institutions are doing different things. Some are pioneering and they've got the resource of large multinational institutions behind them, and they can bring some of that investment here and some of that technology here. Other sectors of the economy are global firms with a Jersey presence.
Yeah.
And they are serving their client in the best interest of their client, and therefore they have to advise their client to structure and use the jurisdiction which is best for their client.
Yeah.
And so it's not a firm necessary driven decision. No. We as a community have to decide whether we want to be competitive in that process and offer the things that we've been talking about into the future. Because if we don't, then those firms who've got an office in Cayman Island, an office in New York, an office in Dubai, an office in Hong Kong, will advise their clients to go where they can best meet their clients' needs.
Yeah.
So we are a jurisdiction of choice, and we've got to remember that, which means that we as a government and as a community have to be attractive to that investment, those structures and those clients.
Also, I know obviously Digital Jersey is accountable mainly to the Minister for Sustainable Development, but what level of engagement have you had with Digital Jersey as well as the Minister for Sustainable Development about competitiveness in Jersey's financial services industry?
Yes, so they, the CEO has been involved in, the CEO has been involved in the competitiveness work, but Tom, maybe you want to just...
Yep, they've been involved in the competitiveness work. They've also been involved in some of the thematic sections. So there was recently a workshop facilitated on different online platforms, portals for KYC, Know Your Customer, where that's an area that we hear from business, it's a very regular pain point, and there is the potential for technology to help us with that. Digital Jersey were part of that roundtable. They've also been contributing to the evidence that's collected under Workstream 3, which has been led by some external consultants, as you know, and I know that they sort of were part of that interview process. So yes, they have been involved. Your earlier question just about evidence around FS businesses and engagement, one of the things I would say, should say, is they've very much given of their time over the course of the last 6 months to be very actively involved in a number of different fora that we've run under competitiveness. So they've fielded lots of people, given of their expertise. And I think that in a way speaks to the latent demand for some of these measures on competitiveness. It's definitely out there in the industry. People are hungry for it. And we've, of course, got an event on the 24th of November where there'll be an important update from the Minister about the work that we've been doing with them.
Yeah. Just in terms of the competitiveness programme work stream, I mean, do you see this being something that will have to remain in place indefinitely, or do you think there's only a certain amount of work that will have to be conducted for a certain period of time before then we might need to then look at something else that will be in place?
So the pivoting our resource to ensure that we are focused as an island on Jersey being and maintaining its competitiveness is not one-off. These work streams to some extent are one-off, but they will flow into lots of other work streams. And so we've got to balance the making sure that we are compliant with international standards and all of the work that Ian is responsible for ensuring we're doing as a jurisdiction. But rather than just focusing on and putting all our resource on that, we've got to balance that with making sure, on the other hand, we are competitive and as bureaucracy-free as possible, and that we're implementing these standards in a proportionate way for a small international finance centre. And that's where we're trying to get to.
Yeah, yeah. And also just in regard to the implementation of this all, and obviously we've got a representative from the corporate department in Treasury, and I just wanted to know how difficult it's been for this to be implemented in time.
So
Pillar
I'm
two.
not quite sure what you...
The Pillar 2 regime.
The law's been passed already.
Yeah. But just in terms of how difficult that's been to obviously get it all
Yeah,
functioning
so
up in
we
time.
got, there's a few different strands. We got the law implemented sort of before the end of last year. So this year we've been working on the IT, getting the IT on board, and the work started on the development of the portal. We have registrations as our first activity. We have 32 groups already registered for the new Pillar 2 tax. So I think we're in a good place to get the remainder done by the end of the year, and then the next phase will be getting the payments starting from next May. So all under control. We have also been kind of slowly and carefully putting people into the roles in accordance with the business case, whether that's administrative or technical. So
Okay, no, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Have you been able to do that all in-house, or have you needed to get outside help?
a mixture. So some of the roles have been filled within existing Revenue Jersey. Some are potentially going to be filled from the wider government pool, and then one or two specialist technical international tax roles we will be getting from external sources.
Thank you. I've got one question. I know we're running out of time. It's going back to the question about Digital Jersey. Clearly, I think you've explained that Digital Jersey provides a lot of support, directly or indirectly, for financial services. Is there an argument to be made that the funding for the grant funding from government should be a mixture of funding from not just economic development, but perhaps from external relations as well?
Well, the money is the money for Digital Jersey is given to the Department for the Economy. So in a way, it doesn't matter. It could be given half there and half given to me.
It does matter
if it really
well, it matters.
Would make any difference.
I'm using as a precedent, I suppose, it's a much smaller grant that's given to the Alliance Française, and I think they get a combined funding from education, external relations and economic development, mindful of the fact that they provide value to all those three key stakeholders. And it might become relevant, of course, if Digital Jersey's funding is under threat.
So I think that the Alliance is slightly different in that I think it was a way of finding money without too much pain to any one department, if I'm honest. And that's why we were able to also provide the additional support on that methodology. Everybody recognised the value it gave, but nobody wanted to pay the whole amount of money, so it was divvied up to save the pain. I'm not sure that's quite the same with Digital Jersey. I think the majority of people recognise the value. It's only around the edges. I think this is the same with all ALOs, really. Everybody recognises the value. It's about around the edges. Are they focused, in my mind, for economic growth and the future? And do we need to, all of us, as government is sharpening its pencil and trying to do the same or more do more with either the same or slightly less? And we've been asking the ALOs to use that same principle.
Yeah, okay. And are you concerned, I mean, I suppose just more generally, you spoke about the value of Digital Jersey. Are you quite clear about what their mandate is and what for the wider government departments? Are they, for example, the delivery arm of government for digital services, or is their raison d'etre slightly different?
So you're asking the wrong person, because I was involved at the incorporation, of course, and I remind ourselves that we needed something to kickstart the thinking and the support for digital work right across the economy. I think at the start there was a potential or a belief that they could have helped a bit more with government digital services, but that was never, I don't think, put into their mandate. And in hindsight, some of that's caused friction because they are a representative body of the digital ecosystem. They've got membership. They're also trying to encourage people to train and study to be ready for the forthcoming digital economy. They're also trying to promote that local industry and grow it. So in hindsight, you can see that could have caused friction when a government is trying to introduce digital services and trying to do a procurement process. And to me, it's disappointing that's been, if it has been, that's been the case, because I think that working together constructively and collaboratively with them can bring far greater benefits than we are currently seeing. And if we can all recognise the importance of this going forward, I think that we can get more out of where each other wants to get to.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's not completely left field. I mean, we're mindful of the fact that there may be, apprenticeships, retraining. People might want to go from fairly analogue-based jobs to work in digital or financial services, and I think that's something we're also mindful of more widely. So,
the key enabling.
thank you.
is. Yeah.
Any further questions from our side?
Not from me, no, thank you.
Minister, any further comments?
No, thank you.
And just finally, thank you again for coming in today.